I'm Daniel. This is Tiffany with Rosenbaum Realty Group. We're talking about the concept of giving up what you want today for what you want most tomorrow.
This reminds me of the parable. It's in a classroom and a little boy comes in. He sits down at his desk. And then mom comes over and puts down one candy and says, hey, I'm going to walk away, but you can have this candy now. And it was a chocolate bar, like Twix. I mean, it was the best candy this kid had ever wanted. He's like, oh, I want this now. She goes, but if you wait an hour, I'll give you 5. And the kid looks over and the mom left. But I want it now. So he picks it up and eats it real quick. The mom comes back and it's been a couple minutes and the kid goes, but I still want the 5. And she goes, but you ate the 1. Eat the 1. You can't have the 5. They did this with multiple kids, and every once in a while you get a kid that'd wait for the 5. And the gratification of that 5 is so much greater than the gratification of the 1. And learning how to wait for the future, for what you want more later. And I love that parable. It looks into our inner kid. It teaches us all about future. Looking to the future, not what you want today, but what you want most tomorrow. Now let's look into how this applies in real estate though, because I know we deal with a lot of investors and every once in a while you'll get one that wants to live off of the income that comes from that one property. Well, I just gained $2,000. Why can't I spend it? Daniel, why don't we talk about that a little bit now and talk about the framework of what's important so you can look to the future and what this actually does for your future.
So it depends on their stage of life, right? Because we do have some retirees, and they definitely expect that money regularly because it's part of their retirement income, and that's great. If you're young and you've invested in a property, and say it's cash flowing $2,000 a month, right? Going back to this concept of, hey, do they want to take that and live off of it, or would it be applied and would it be a better use of that money go towards buying another property, right? Or to building a bigger portfolio of real estate.
Right off. When you get an investment, there's certain funds that need to go. First thing, set up a separate bank account. I was on social media the other day and they said, oh, I just give the residents my bank account and it goes into my personal fund. It's like, no. First of all, if you are not treating that building like an investment, a business, you are setting yourself up to fail. So first, set up a separate bank account. Make sure all the money goes into a separate bank account that you don't live off of. Even if you're elderly, it is important that you have set aside enough money to handle that building, because there's going to be ups and downs like we talked about earlier when we were videoing. What about a 30, when a roof goes bad? How are they going to afford it if they're living off of that $2,000 that came in, or $6,000? Let's say it's a multi-family building. If you live off of that $6,000 every month, how are they going to pay for that roof?
Investors need to expect the unexpected. They also need to plan and budget for large ticket items, such as needing to replace the roof or replacing an AC unit. The life cycle of an AC, we've had some that have lasted a lot longer than this, but the expectancy is about 10 years. Okay, we've had some that are 30 years old and that we're expecting them to fail and that we need to replace. Roofs, okay, they vary, but on a 30-year shingle roof, you expect 30 years, but if it's already 30 years old, you need to expect and budget and plan for spending that money when it's coming up to the end of its useful life. And that's it's very critical to think about those things. So you're right. People need to plan they need to expect the unexpected. They need to plan for what happens when there's a turnover. Okay, the maintenance costs are rising as well, and investors need to budget and plan for expenses when they come up. Even if they're in a later point in their life and they're retired and they rely on that income, they still need to put back. You're absolutely right. They need to plan on those things. So
when you're buying a property or real estate rental property, the most important thing is that you budget certain things. And on maintenance, you should be budgeting depending on when the property was built. If it's an A property, you don't need 15 to 20% in maintenance. Usually it's around 5. But if it's a B, C class and it's older, you need to be budgeting 15 to 20% of gross rental income that goes towards maintenance, turnover. And this fund should be expanding. It should be building up. This isn't capital improvements though. When you do a whole new roof, not a repair, that is a capital improvement. So you need to be budgeting on top of that 15 to 20% that's going towards maintenance. And so that's why I say the most important thing is that you do a separate bank account. And most of the funds stay in that. Now, if you're elderly and this is funds that you're like, hey, I want to live off of, you should be every month. If you're making $2,000, if you can do it, I would say $1,000. Everything goes into that bank account, until that bank account can handle a roof, AC unit, and a water heater. Because let's discuss this a little bit. If it can't handle that, what's the number one reason residents move out? Maintenance. So if you're not planning for the unexpected, you're setting yourself up to fail again, right? So you have to have a fund for the unexpected. And what you talked about at the beginning, which is really important. If you have one building, what's your goal? Let's go back to that kid that had that one and decided to eat it. He couldn't have the 5. So this fund that you're putting aside in a separate bank account is to build and help you buy multiple. It's not to live off of. It's to build and buy multiple, because when you have 2 properties, all of a sudden you have more rent coming in. And so when a maintenance thing happens, usually you don't have the maintenance thing happen on 2 properties at the exact same time. Now it does happen, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. So all of a sudden you have more funds coming in that can handle the maintenance. You don't have to have as big of a fund built up. Now you build this fund up, you buy a 3rd property, 4th property, 5th property. Then all of a sudden, you have more income that can handle this. A roof comes in, oh, well, I can pay for it, no problem, because I have 5 units being leased out. I'm making $30,000 a month. All of a sudden, it's a lot easier. So it's not about getting one. And so this is what we talk about with our investors. It's, where's your goal? How many do you want to own? What are you thinking about 10, 15, 20 years down the road? How many do you want to own? How much wealth do you want to build up?
When we analyze real estate and looking at the long term, we want it to be at least break even, if not positive cash flow. And then when you've held it for a few years, you realize you've built equity in the property. And you can also take that method to pull out the equity to go use it to invest and buy more properties. Listening to Barbara Corcoran, a similar mindset where when she makes an investment in real estate, she doesn't want to touch it. She lets it sit there and just pay for itself, for several years. And then when she goes back, she can go pull out the equity and she can go reinvest it. And she just does more deals that way. But she looks at it as, hey, she just doesn't want to be negative, and she wants to be, basically just a net zero on the cash flow. She wants to be break even. She was okay with break even. She's looking for break even, and she's good with that, because then she goes back and she's like, oh, it's a fat, juicy property. I've got all this equity now. And then she can go back and go buy some more properties. 100%.
And what you said is very true. When we got into real estate in 2010, and we were on food storage, like literally we didn't have AC or heat in our home because we could not afford it. We were on food storage and really struggling when we got into it, and that rent started coming in. It'd be so easy to live off of that rent. But we said, no, we're going to live like nobody else right now so we can live like nobody else in the future. And so we lived off of food storage even after we got into real estate to make sure we didn't touch that. Even when money wasn't coming in, that money went into a bank account and we said, we don't have it. It's not ours.
In 2010 and 11 and 12, when we bought several properties, we looked at it too, because a lot of these properties had original ACs. And when they came in to get replaced, there goes the entire budget of the year for what the maintenance is. That's why it's so critical to plan for the unexpected, expect the unexpected, put a budget in place to do those big ticket items.
But you got to sacrifice that one candy bar now. You got to sacrifice that $2,000 that you got in this month from rent. When you sacrifice that to gain what you want tomorrow. And at Rosenbaum Realty Group, we can actually help you. I love discussing this with owners. Hey, what's your goal? Where do you want to be? Do you want 5? Like if someone comes into our portfolio and has 1, we want to discuss with them. Do you want that 1, or do you want to get to 5, 10, 20 units and build up this where it goes to generational wealth? And it also helps us understand and educate owners on this method that we're talking about here today. Is this needs to be a separate bank account. This is something we don't touch. This is something that builds for you for generations to come. And that's what I wholeheartedly believe in at Rosenbaum Realty Group.
That's the effective method to plan for the future and what do they want out of their real estate, and what are their goals in their investment properties.
The thing is, anybody can do it. but they have to be willing to sacrifice that one candy bar, that $2,000. And literally anybody can do it, but what are you willing to sacrifice? Most people are not willing to sacrifice what they want now for what they want later. And if they can do that, anybody can become that millionaire. Anybody can do that. It depends on what they're willing to sacrifice. And I know that because of where we were at. Shoot, when we were on food storage, I never thought we were going to get out of that. A lot of tears. But we sacrificed what we wanted most that day for what we wanted to see in the future. So again, it depends on what you're willing to sacrifice. And I would love to discuss it with anybody. Ask questions on this. Put what you're doing to make money right now. And how many units would you like to own?